this is Silver Nanoparticles versus Bacteria by Jordan Durst, Edward Lee, Rohan Chanbag, and Charlie Wright. I am Rohan Chanbag, and I'll get us started today with the types of nanoparticles used in our experiment. The researchers primarily used silver nanoparticles for the antibacterial experiment. The synthesis of silver nanoparticles took place with different shapes, such as nanocubes or nanorods. As you can see in the images over here, nanorods are image A on the bottom there, and then nanocubes is going to be image B right next to it, so you can see the distinct shapes. The size of the nanocubes was around 5 to 100 nanometers, and they needed to use smaller nanocubes for the first part of the experiment, and then the second part of the experiment needed larger silver nanoparticles, and they were around 100 to 200 nanometers.
So silver nanoparticles have positive and negative gram-bacteria antibacterial properties, and this can be used in multiple applications such as face masks, catheters, and also just like gels for ointments that you put on like open scabs. The way that it would help face masks is that with a silver nanoparticle lining, it would be able to stop the spread of bacteria like E. coli, and with catheters, it also the same thing. For long-term use for catheters, bacteria might build up. So having a lining of silver nanoparticles might be really beneficial for some hospital patients that are staying there long term. In general, silver nanoparticles can be used for various reasons, mainly just focusing on like high infectious areas that might have a lot of bacteria on them. Silver nanoparticles are great at minimizing these areas. Um, as I said before, you can put nanoparticles into gels, put it on a cut or a wound, and help. Um, it will lower the possibility of you getting an infection in that area.
Howdy, I'm Jordan. The exact way silver nanoparticles are used and against bacteria is not quite understood. However, three experimental methods have been observed. One method is that it acts on the membrane level where silver nanoparticles passes through the bacterial membrane and causes the cell to destabilize. This then causes the membrane to become more permeable and allows things to come in and slowly kill the bacteria. In some cases, the nanoparticles interact with the sulfur proteins and cause structural damage to the bacterial membranes. Another method is that the particles pass through the membrane and react with the sulfur and phosphorus groups to alter the cellular functions. For example, they might interact with the thiol group enzymes that allow the cell to grow and inhibit the normal functions of the cell, therefore killing it. The third method is that the silver nanoparticles release silver ions that interact with the cell, causing changes to its normal cellular functions, which then lead to its death. And in the image here, you can see an example of silver nanoparticles and releasing ions in the cell, causing it to destabilize and die.
Hi, I'm Charlie. The advantages of silver nanoparticles include its ability to inhibit growth of bacteria, reduce posterior resistance more effectively than antibiotics, and target the bacteria with multiple mechanisms of action that occur in parallel. These mechanisms include acting on the membrane, affecting intracellular components, and altering the respiratory chain. However, bacteria that were given sublethal doses of silver nanoparticles exhibited resistance to antibiotics, decreasing the efficiency of antibiotics. Part of the reason to this is because of the physiological changes that occur after the bacteria was treated with silver nanoparticles. These physiological changes include lower permeability and the thickening of the membrane, promoting posterior resistance to antibiotics. However, pairing silver nanoparticles with other antibiotics has been shown to be much more effective. For example, bacteria treated with silver nanoparticles in conjunction with kanamycin proved to inhibit the growth of bacteria by close to 95%. When silver nanoparticles are used with other antibiotics, their effectiveness allows for a lower dosage, preventing secondary effects associated with both kanamycin and silver nanoparticles.
Yeah, so these are our references. Thank you. So the first one is Silver Nanoparticles and Their Antibacterial Applications by the International Journal of Molecular Sciences. And the second one is the silver-based plasmodic nanoparticles for and their use. So that is the image there. And then there's one final message. Eliminate the bacteria.